Hello, everyone. I'm Glenn, President of Cure Sanfilippo Foundation. Thank you for joining Advanced 2024 Sanfilippo Community Conference, where we bring together all of you, families and caregivers, scientists, clinicians and therapists, educators, advocacy organizations, regulators, biotechs, and supporters. Everyone here plays a role, and working together, we're more efficient and effective in helping children and families with Sanfilippo syndrome. This is our third annual conference with a packed agenda this year again, and we can't wait to get started. We look forward to hearing about the progress in Sanfilippo and, with your help, the work the Foundation is doing to continue to move the needle. For families of children hoping for some type of option or chance in a clinical trial, the progress can never move fast enough. The rapid nature of the disease progression is one of the most heartbreaking aspects of Sanfilippo syndrome, but progress is being made. When our daughter Eliza was diagnosed more than 11 years ago now, there were very few clinical trial opportunities. One was a gene therapy and another was an enzyme replacement study, neither which were open to enrolling at the time. With the acceleration of awareness, funding, and biotech interest, there have been over 20 trials over the past 2 decades, still though, no approved therapies. During that time, the groups working on these programs, as well as the advocacy organizations and the community, learned together the difficulty in getting a drug approved by regulatory agencies for wider use. There are complexities involved, such as which endpoints to choose in trial design and which tests to administer to show that improvement, the time it takes to show the improvement, the financial runway of biotechs impacted by the enormous cost of these projects and programs, drug production challenges, and so much more. Now, to an outsider looking in, this doesn't all seem to make logical or ethical sense. You have a sick child in need of a time-sensitive treatment, and we've seen in some of these trials you have drugs that show effectiveness in preclinical models and in human trials showing children that are receiving the drug are reducing levels of toxic heparan sulfate, the main storage buildup in Sanfilippo. So why can't we pair these two up together to get children treated in an easy and quick way? Many rare diseases are facing the exact same challenges we are. To combat this, more consortiums are being formed, bringing together more voices at the same table. Platform approaches across several diseases are emerging. A rare disease hub at the FDA has been created. We're very proud and as being founding members of ISA, the International Sanfilippo Syndrome Alliance of Foundations around the world. And there's other collaborations happening, which are all incredibly important. We're involved in many of these, and these are a great step that will undoubtedly have a major impact on future generations. But the time this progress takes, our children are suffering and dying today. We prioritize today's children. The reality is that the families on this call, not just future generations, want hope too. Some of them have seen it as their kids have been able to participate in clinical trials. And even of those, some have seen the heartbreak of a therapy, such as an enzyme replacement being administered, only to have the trial and their lifeline stopped for various reasons. Some have seen the heartbreak of receiving an ineffective dose of gene therapy and not having access to redosing strategies that allow them to receive a therapeutic dose or the ability to enroll in another trial. And of course, some others have seen the ongoing benefits from treatments that continue today. Hope is an interesting word in this disease. I think everyone probably has their own view on hope. And I don't speak for everyone, but I've heard many families talk about hope that their child would just be able to be given a chance. And these families are well educated that being in a trial doesn't mean you snap your fingers and that the child is going to be all better. One day, maybe, we hope. But the reality at this stage is that the results are pointing to slowing the progression or hopefully halting it. But how must it feel to see other children being treated in clinical trials, getting their chance, but not your child? Maybe it's because the child missed the inclusion criteria window by just a few days, or maybe they have some other medical challenges in addition to Sanfilippo that exclude them, or often there just aren't enough spots in these small trials. Whatever the reason, it's tragic. These are the families I think about most, and that's the reason our foundation pushes to bring more opportunities for children in clinical trials. We're proud that, thanks to the support, we've been able to help with funding 2 gene therapies for type A and type B, which took place over the past years. We've also been able to fund a drug repurposing study, which accepted children and adults with all types of Sanfilippo testing the drug anakinra, which, because of study results, many families have been able to access off-label. We're committed to funding another drug repurposing study, hopefully to start in the next few months, also open to all Sanfilippo subtypes, and we'll hear more about this tomorrow. We're also working on other trial opportunities, preclinical research for Sanfilippo syndrome. We're exploring various therapeutic breakthroughs, some of which we'll hear about over the next couple of days. In addition to funding research and clinical trials, always a primary focus of our foundation, we've also worked on other ways to advance progress, as well as provide support to families and children. Important projects led by the foundation include the caregiver preference study and the published articles. This study was a first for Sanfilippo to show the risk-benefit profile of caregivers and parents of children. One important use for the study is providing supplemental information for the FDA to access when making decisions regarding potential new clinical trials as well as potential approvals. Another important project was the Global Clinical Guidelines, several years in the making with our collaborators, which finally gives doctors, parents, and everyone a playbook as to how best to care for and monitor a child with Sanfilippo. This was a global project bringing together consensus opinions from Sanfilippo experts around the world. We've seen these guidelines being used across the country and world. These public guidelines serve as a critical reference which has allowed families to receive approval for therapies, medical equipment, and more. Another area of support for families has been our hiring of our Community Engagement Coordinator, Cassidy Reynolds. She's helping families work through challenges with school IEPs, insurance issues, access to therapies. She spearheaded the Sanfilippo Speak webinar series on these and other topics, and is meeting the families in person at our family gatherings, which continue to grow. Our most recent Sanfilippo gatherings were in South Carolina, St. Louis, and Columbus, Ohio, with more to come. There's nothing quite like being able to spend time with a family in your area who can relate. Sometimes these folks are meeting each other for the first time in person, and it might be the only other family with Sanfilippo they've ever met. I've attended these events and they're incredibly heartwarming and filled with acceptance that most of our families don't have in daily life. So our foundation continues to evolve. We continue to look for venture philanthropy opportunities where possible to help advance therapies and make the donor dollars go further. And what else have we learned over the years? I think we continue to gain more insight into the wide spectrum of symptoms and progression for all types of Sanfilippo. Each person with Sanfilippo is unique, and while studies have plotted out the typical disease course for the classic severe disease, there's less known about other phenotypes and forms of Sanfilippo. Of course, there are attenuated and slower progressing versions we know about, and we know type C and type D seem to progress slower on average. But we also know adults who have jobs, living a nearly typical life, who are diagnosed with Sanfilippo because of retina and vision problems. Later this morning, we'll hear from two Sanfilippo sisters, one in high school and one in college, who will tell you a little bit about their lives. They're just amazing girls with amazing parents. Fast progressing, typical versions of Sanfilippo are thought to be the most common, but how do we really know? These, of course, are diagnosed first because the symptoms start appearing. But how many others of these less aggressive types of Sanfilippo are there out there that simply may never be accurately diagnosed? And what can we learn from these variations of the disease? Of course, there are progression charts for what the averages are regarding disease symptoms and cognitive decline. We even have this on our website to impress upon the urgency. Many children do follow this path, but more and more we are seeing those that are diagnosed with intermediate disease phenotypes who show variability. The takeaway is that no two children with Sanfilippo are exactly alike, and this is one of the reasons researching this disease is so challenging. But regardless, all should have access to appropriate help through these medical advances. I mentioned cognitive decline, and one of the areas we are hoping people will understand and take into consideration in trial design and evaluation, including regulatory groups and industry partners, is that a child's life cannot simply be evaluated by a cognitive test. It's a tool, one tool, and granted it's an important one. But from our caregiver preference study, parents told us that cognitive ability is not the only thing that is important for children and parents. Well-being, quality of life, things like sleep, discomfort and pain, movement disorders, eating and drinking, mobility, are at the top of the list of what parents care about for their child. Some of these, of course, tie into cognitive as well, but the disease is a full-body disease impacting bones, joints, muscles, peripheral nerves, and every cell in the body. If therapies can help in any of these areas, that's something to bring forward for approval with the regulatory agencies so more children can access. I'd argue it's unethical not to. It's been a decade plus one for us and our foundation, and I don't want it to take another decade to come to approved therapies. In a recent meeting with FDA led by the Reagan-Udall Foundation, medical experts and advocates came together to demonstrate that the reduction of heparan sulfate, the primary toxic buildup in Sanfilippo, should be used as a valid surrogate biomarker for Sanfilippo syndrome and other MPS diseases for potential therapies. Our Chief Science Officer, my wife, Dr. Kara O'Neill, was honored to give the 10-minute closing remarks at the meeting, which will play later in the conference. And as many of you are aware, just a couple months later, the FDA aligned with the use of heparan sulfate as a biomarker for accelerated approval. So we have FDA in agreement. We have therapies in clinical trials showing this heparan sulfate reduction. 1 + 1 should equal 2. This should lead us to the first approved treatment for Sanfilippo, and I don't mean just in our lifetime, but hopefully within the coming year. And we always must look to the future. A treatment may get approved, but what happens next? What happens then? A drug is approved, but only for the specific type of Sanfilippo being studied. And what age ranges is it approved for? How much will it cost? Will insurance cover it? What about other types of Sanfilippo? The point is that getting an approval is just the first step towards working to get all people with Sanfilippo access to treatments. Based on other rare diseases who've been down this path, we know the steps won't be easy. There is a great deal of work ahead, and it's thanks to our supporters out there that this important work can continue, and our incredible more than 150 partner families who are out there fighting every day, spreading awareness, fundraising, and advocating for the mission of Cure Sanfilippo. We are up for the task ahead. It's what these 11 years of foundational work have prepared us for. Together, we'll see more kids getting the opportunities they deserve and a chance at a healthier and happier life. There's nothing more important. Thank you.